Hello and welcome to this download from Blackwell Online. My name is George Miller, and my guest today is Mark Ellingham. Mark's worked in publishing for over a quarter of a century. He set up the now legendary Rough Guide imprint almost inadvertently when he decided that none of the guides to Greece told him the things he wanted to know, so he wrote his own. He now works for independent publisher Profile Books, where, in partnership with Oxfam, he's just launched Ox Tales, a series of 4 short story anthologies which feature new work by many of the finest names in contemporary fiction. I asked Mark to tell me how the idea had originated.
When I came to work at Profile, I wanted to set up some projects for charities. I felt that charities didn't do particularly interesting books, and I felt that books shouldn't look like charity books. So I kind of racked my brain about what we could do for Oxfam, which I had some links with and had met up with various people there. And it was a question of sort of finding a tag, whether we could find an anniversary or whatever. And in the end, I came up with this idea of doing the 4 elements. Partly, if we do 4 books, it provides a sort of bigger framework and a more of an event in publishing. And I also had this idea that the 4 elements, earth, air, fire and water, we could slip in a little bit about Oxfam's activities into each one. So the water volume, for example, has a little section at the back which Oxfam have written about their water aid projects, the air one links with climate change, the fire with conflict resolution, and the earth with probably the more traditional Oxfam areas of agricultural development in the developing world. And I think, my hope is that people who probably wouldn't bother to read an Oxfam magazine or an Oxfam annual report, even if they were supporters, will, because they've been reading a story by Jonathan Coe or Alexander McCall-Smith, find themselves by accident reading about Oxfam's activities.
Once you'd got the concept straight, did you then sit down and draw up a dream list of your ideal contributors?
The dream list I drew up with Peter Florence from the Hay Festival, who's worked very closely with me as an editor of the volumes. And Peter probably has the best address book of British and Irish-based writers in the world, I should think. So we kind of came up with this dream list between us. And I think we got about 55 or 60 authors on our dream list and wrote to them. And we were hoping to get originally 20 stories, to have 5 in each volume. 5 stories for a £5 we thought was a good offering. Then actually a few started coming in and they were a little bit short, and we thought we probably needed a bit more than that. So we kept writing. And of those 60 that we wrote to, 38 sent us stories, which is quite a phenomenal hit rate, which I think reflects incredibly well on the affection that people in this country and writers have for Oxfam, and the opportunity to get involved and help raise some money.
How tight or how loose was the brief that you set the authors?
The brief was as loose as we could possibly make it. We wanted to make it as easy as we could for the writers, and we wanted the writers to be able to, we felt it's better to give them a very, very loose subject, so at least they can get, if they want a subject, there is a subject in one of the elements. And some of them, were very closely tied in. There's a lovely story by Helen Simpson, which is absolutely a sort of, it's actually a very funny story about climate change and relationships and air miles, but it fits perfectly into the air volume. And the Mark Hatton story, for example, that seemed to suggest fire, though in the very loosest way. There are quite a few watery stories which, by nature, happily went into that volume. There were other ones which I think, to be honest, could have gone into any of the volumes, but it all sort of fits together. But there's no straitjacket on the writer's imagination at all.
So you didn't say, we would like you to write 3,000 words on the theme of fire?
We didn't actually give them really anything in terms of a page length either. I mean, the stories here range from about 40 pages through to 2 pages, where Ian Rankin wrote a 200-word story, which is a wonderful story. It's a little mini rebus mystery, perfectly satisfying in itself, but thank goodness they weren't all 200 words.
Now, I know it's like asking a parent to choose between children, but I'm going to ask you anyway. You must have some that you have a particular affection for personally. I wondered if you could maybe pick out some of the ones that you particularly enjoyed.
That's a very difficult one, because obviously I love all the stories equally. They're all incredibly different as well. The Alexander McCall Smith one I thought was a wonderful short story, again about a relationship and about this character who flies into a Scottish island sort of really out of the blue, and it creates, I mean, it's almost like a miniature Alexander McCall Smith novel in a short form. Wonderful. The DBC Pierre story I really liked, which was just a fantastically sort of redolent story about a homeless person who sort of is a kind of caretaker in an office in the Caribbean, and I thought also the sort of homelessness in the Caribbean also, had a sort of nicely Oxfam air about it. I thought the Zoe Heller story, which comes in the Water volume, which is about a teenage girl coming to terms with her own sexuality and in a sort of slightly threatened environment, absolutely outstanding piece of fiction. But they really are all of an amazingly high quality. It's a wonderful one about Nicholas Shakespeare in the Earth volume, about the death of Marat and about whether political assassination can be justified in any way. I mean, it's a wonderfully thought-provoking story. I could really literally go on about each one of them and sing its praises. And some of the authors actually who gave us, I mean, most of the stories here are new, but a few of them were sort of things that authors found in their bottom drawer, of which probably one of the nicest examples is Helen Fielding's story. We'll call it a story. It's actually the first, we helped her edit down the first 4 chapters of an unfinished novel, which was the novel that she was writing when Bridget Jones suddenly took off, and it suddenly found itself in the bottom drawer, and she dusted it off and slightly rewrote it. And that again, I think, is a really lovely little example of something being put to fantastic use.
So you hope this project will revolutionise people's views of what a charity book is, take away its dowdy associations, and pave the way, one imagines, for future projects.
Well, I would hope that people buy it not really thinking of it as a charity project at all, but buy it because they want to read this story by Rose Tremaine, or when the case is, say, Jonathan Coe. You're getting a wonderful privileged, it's actually a section of his next novel which won't come out for a year, so it's a wonderfully privileged access to that. So I hope people will buy it because they want to read the stories by the particular authors. Also, it's fantastically good value. You're getting 9 or 10 stories for a £5. So I don't think it needs any excuses, but I think the fact that it is in aid of charity, hopefully people will feel that they're buying something they want to buy, but it's great that money is going to Oxfam because of that, and actually making a real difference to people's lives around the world in the developing world.